I have been pretty straightforward, I think, for the most part, in terms of where my overall feelings on this NBA Finals series lie. But I wanted to just sort of wait it out and as much as I could and sort of come to a more, reasonable conclusion as to where I think that this NBA Finals series lies. Of course, the Boston Celtics versus the Dallas Mavericks. The series officially tips off on Thursday night, so tomorrow night at the time of recording here. And we did just get news that Kristaps Porzingis is officially good to go for Game 1 against Dallas. This was sort of expected for a while, but it's been talked about on many different outlets. Porzingis does have a massive role in this series as to both sides of the ball of forcing Dallas's very interior-heavy defense to guard out along the perimeter, specifically looking at Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, who throughout the postseason run so far have both been incredible for Dallas, but they were at least able to sort of hide at various times on worse three-point shooting options, where when you go back to they both did a really good job in the Clippers series, although we did see Maxi Kleber, who also was dealing with the dislocated shoulder injury. He carried a lot of the load as well in that Clippers series. This could be a spot for him in the finals, because then once Kleber went down, we saw the Mavericks were able to benefit from having a Josh Giddey getting minutes in the starting lineup, where he is who the big man would take between Gafford and Lively, and they could sort of roam around in the paint a little bit more. Even when they went to that more traditional, spacing lineup, the Thunder that is, the backup center Jalen Williams, it was clear that the Mavericks were willing to live with him making shots, and he was unable to do so. And it's not like Chet was this, flamethrower from three that I know he can be in future years to come, but that didn't necessarily play out in that series. And then you look at the series against the Timberwolves, and Rudy Gobert, of course, was never going to be a threat from outside. Karl Anthony Towns did end up getting some decent looks from three, but really outside of his Game 4 performance, his three-point shot was never there for him. So this is a series that I do think that the Celtics can be a little bit more traditional 5-out and force the Mavericks into guarding them along the perimeter, and that is going to be a massive part of this series. Now, at various times, we did see opposing teams of the Boston Celtics sort of give up that three-point shot to Al Horford. Specifically, if you look at the final few games of the Cleveland series, and then even a little bit early on against Indiana. And Al Horford is somebody that, to some degree, you can live with him taking shots, but then there's also a chance he shoots 50% like he did in the closeout game against Cleveland and in Game 3 against Indiana. So it's not necessarily this chalk it in, you don't have to worry about it from a perimeter perspective, which could definitely be a key alteration in this series. But a lot of people, if you are going to pick the Mavericks, the thought process is that Luka Doncic is the best player in the series, and you are going to ride it out with him. They also have some lengthy defenders as well to possibly throw at Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with the combination of PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr., who have been incredible through this postseason run. And if you're the Celtics, there isn't really that exposable mismatch as well, where we did see, as much as Tyrese Halliburton is a massive piece of that Pacers team, the Celtics' easiest offense during that Eastern Conference Finals series, at least through the first two games, was to go at Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard to some degree as well, and some of those smaller guards. But I don't believe that Dallas is necessarily that sort of exploitable on the defensive end. So there, we've seen in the past, specifically if you look at the last finals run for the Celtics in 2022, the Warriors had length in Andrew Wiggins, and he was able to shut down Tatum. Now, we went through this yesterday on the show, the fact that we saw Tatum have to carry this massive offensive load through the postseason, that round by round his points per game dipped. Meanwhile, this year, we are seeing him only get better as the postseason comes along here, averaged 30 points per game in that Eastern Conference Finals series, and should be much more rested in terms of, having his legs under him. Also just understanding now what it's like to go through that full 4-round postseason run. I think that the Celtics were just sort of outclassed from a maturity and stamina standpoint when they faced a Warriors team that had been to the finals just a few years before. Obviously, not the exact same core as the 2019 playoff run, but you get the point. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, they knew what it took. The Celtics didn't at that point. So, when you look at the difference in experience as well in this series, it is a lot of unprovens, you could say. There's one NBA champion on each team, Kyrie Irving for the Dallas Mavericks, of course, and Drew Holiday for the Boston Celtics. Both of those players winning their rings with different teams, but coming in as sort of lead guard types. Kyrie, obviously, a little bit more of a lead guard in the traditional standpoint, but both of them held massive roles in their postseason runs when they won, within the past decade. Kyrie in 2016, Drew Holiday a little bit more recent in 2021. But again, other than those players, there hasn't been a ton of, finals experience. The Celtics do hold the overall edge, though, in terms of the fact that they just made the finals a couple years ago. So overall here, when you are comparing these two rosters, this would be pretty devastating from a Celtics perspective if they were to fall short in this series, considering the fact that this was supposed to be their season, all the way through. At least the Eastern Conference was sort of a little bit of a shoo-in that there shouldn't be another team in the East that can really contend with the Celtics. The Mavericks put together this dark horse run, and it is awesome to see, but at the same time, they sort of defied expectations. This season is already a massive success for them. Meanwhile, for the Celtics, this is to some degree where the Celtics have kind of, this is where their season starts to some degree, where, you include their regular season and their postseason record. They are now 76-20, I believe the Celtics are. So to put together, this dominant run through the entire, call it, 8 months now that the Celtics have been playing basketball, going back to October, and to fall short here would be, again, I think a little detrimental. Now, in terms of how they would look at the future of their organization, I feel like they have their top 7 guys under contract for the next couple of years, as long as Al Horford doesn't retire. There is a little bit of speculation there that if they were to win, he would want to go out on top. But, for the most part, this team is going to be staying together, I believe. But, there is absolutely a ton of pressure with them. And I do think that they're the better team. The Mavericks, again, have been incredible. I didn't necessarily see them putting together this entire run. I forget if I actually picked them. I know I picked them over the Clippers. I forget what my exact prediction was going into OKC. But, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And the Mavericks absolutely have stuff to build off of in years to come. The Celtics should be the better team right now, though, in terms of top 7 for top 7. Now, the Mavericks are a deeper team than I think a lot of people believe. We saw some struggles with the Celtics bench unit in the Eastern Conference Finals. Get to that point, getting Porzingis back is that much more important, because not that Al Horford is your traditional creator, but you get to sort of stagger his minutes. You get to have Porzingis playing off of the bench a little bit more. And I will say, sort of when you look at, again, knock on wood that he is able to be fully healthy, there is a slight concern with Porzingis' injury history. If you look at sort of what happened in Game 7 for the Knicks when they faced the Pacers in the Eastern Conference semifinals, that idea of coming into a big matchup. Now, this is game 1 as opposed to game 7, so the Celtics would have time to react, but the Knicks think that OG Anunoby is going to be good to go, and within the first 5 minutes, it's clear that he is unable to. And I do feel like the Celtics have been preparing probably since, to some degree, the Eastern Conference Finals, that Porzingis was going to be back for this finals appearance. What if he isn't good to go? Could be a massive wrench in the situation here for the Celtics. But ultimately, as much as Luka Doncic is the best player in this series, I don't think that Jason Tatum is, miles behind him. Now, Luka is, I would say, top 3 without a doubt. Tatum is in that top 10. Now, you can definitely argue whether he's closer to 5 or 10, but I don't believe that it is this massive fall off from Luka to Tatum, and that's something that we'll get into a little bit more in the next segment. But I think that ultimately, it's those 4 of Kyrie and Luka versus Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that are overall pretty evenly matched. And then what is the remainder of the group going to be able to produce? I think that I lean with the Celtics in that situation. Now, Luka does have sort of this level that he can go to that I don't think a Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can go to. Luka, this level in terms of a scoring perspective. But all of that to be said, this should be a really good series. If it's going to be a blowout one way or another, it's going to be Luka not having the legs under him. He was dealing with all of these injuries in the first 2 rounds, and he looked, flawless in the Western Conference Finals. Hopefully that holds up as well, but I am going to lean with the Celtics for this series, and I guess my official pick would be Celtics in, let's call it 6. Mavericks absolutely do have a play at this, but I just believe that the Celtics are the better team. I think that they are really capable of throwing a lot of different defensive looks. The Mavericks on defense themselves have a lot of great individual defenders, and I've been really impressed with their paint protection and some of the, rotations off of that as well. But I don't think that from a personnel standpoint they necessarily have these different options. Now, Jason Kidd and Joe Mazzulla really both have a little bit of proving themselves to do. Now, they obviously both have their jobs headed into next season, but both coaches that have been questioned over their most recent tenures. Jason Kidd, going back a little bit more, as well as he has had some, less than ideal stints. But there is a lot of prove-its on both sides of this series, and I'm going to lean with the Celtics on this one. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section. We are going to take a break here, and when we come back on the other side, I want to stick to the conversation surrounding this series and go through and rank the top 10 players in the NBA Finals. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments section, but we will be right back after this quick break. Stick with us.